Well, hello, dear friends, and welcome back to the Learning Future podcast. I'm your host, Louka Parry, and I'm here today with Dr. Annalies Corbin. She is the founder and CEO of the PAST Foundation, a trailblazing organization transforming education for this century. She's a relentless innovator, as you'll hear, and she has been reshaping how we connect learning to life for the past 25 years, bridging the gap between scientific research, real-world problem solving, and classroom experiences. It's been 25 years, actually, since Dr. Corbin founded the PAST Foundation. And, it kind of began with this idea of how can you connect scientific research with classroom, schools, and communities. And we'll hear about her background shortly. It's from a single school partnership in 2006. It is now a nationwide movement across the United States, impacting over 3 million students, 22,000 teachers across 42 states, and fostering hundreds of partnerships. Dr. Corbin runs her own podcast called Learning Unboxed, where she challenges listeners to rethink education and create innovative solutions to meet changing needs of the workforce. Get this, her 6th book, goodness gracious, Hacking School, 5 Strategies to Link Learning to Life, was published in 2024, and it continues her mission to bridge the gap between education and real-world applications. Annalies, thanks for joining us on the Learning Future podcast.
Well, thank you for having me and for that very gracious introduction. So I appreciate being here. I'm looking forward to it.
You've been busy, clearly. And, I know that I can tell we're going to have such a really interesting conversation about learning, life, education. My first question always is, what is something that you are learning right now in your work and your life?
So what I am learning right now is about the journey of humanness, right? So a little bit of a personal piece. My father has Alzheimer's, and it's okay, right? It is what it is. Yeah. So what am I learning? I am learning about being a caregiver of somebody late in life, and it informs what I do right now, what I do every day, but it's also, interestingly enough, really started to inform the way I think about how we think about teaching and learning, right? I watch the things he remembers versus the things he doesn't remember. And I watch the way he takes and applies the work of his work over his lifetime into his current scenario. It's fascinating to me. So, taking that sad moment and turning it into an opportunity to say, the human brain is an amazing thing.
Wow, that's such a powerful reflection. Because I often think, and I think we're going to get pretty philosophical here to start at least, but there is something about reflecting on what it's all for, the purpose of one's life. And of course, when we have, for all of us, we will come at some point, our lives will come to an end. So it's kind of, what's the purpose of my life? What's my soul's purpose? And how, of course, do we apply that to our work in education systems? What's the purpose of this activity? I think we get so obsessed by what works and kind of that conversation that we forget about what matters. And just because if we're trying to achieve efficiencies, but what about effectiveness? What about doing the right things instead of doing things right? So take us a bit into the work then, Annalies. Like, why this work for you? Why are you sitting here talking to me now? Like, what is it that has captured you? And written all these books and done the podcast and, worked with these millions of kids?
For me, it's about honoring the journey of curiosity. So, I was a kid, full transparency. I loved to learn stuff. I was that kid that liked to read. I was that kid that was perfectly content to sit in a corner and just explore. I loved wandering, right? Everything was a question. And so the idea, but as I progressed in my own learning journey, and especially as I got older towards high school, I was that kid that was bored to tears. And it had a profound impact, to go from the joy of discovery and curiosity and exploration into, oh my God, are you doing this to me today? Right? And everything in between. And it's just not something, we're losing so much by not fostering that curious nature that kids have and just really embracing kids and students, and they have so much to offer the world. And we keep telling them, no, you're not old enough, or you haven't graduated, or you haven't met this artificial milestone that someone sitting in a room 150 years ago created and we're still living with for reasons that are completely beyond me most days. So So for me, that's what it was about. It's like, can we really do something different? And to fundamentally ask the question every single day when I get up, what are we preparing kids for?
What's your current construct to answer that question?
So for me,
because that's the heart of the matter, really, isn't it?
it is. It is the heart of the matter. And I guess for me, right, I mean, I don't think I've ever met anybody that doesn't agree. We want these young people, and we can define young in 1,000 different ways, right? We want these young individuals to grow up to be happy, healthy, and contribute to society in a meaningful way, right? Yes, 100%. But I think we want a little bit more than that. We want these people to be joyful. We want people to find their passions, the things they love in life, and we want them to figure out how to turn that into a career and a contribution. We want to help people like be their fully authentic self and to bring that authentic self safely and with fidelity to every moment of their lives. That's what we're preparing kids for, in my mind.
Damn, that's great. Sign me up. I hadn't heard it. I hadn't put it in that. I hadn't heard it put in that way. You know, there's a kind of frame that I really like that I heard from Dr. John Churchill, which is the purpose of life is to individuate as much as possible in order to be of service to the collective. And there's something about that I love. I think we forget the latter part often, and we become a bit navel-gazing and inward, and my journey and my truth versus like what am I here to give and be a part of the self-transcendent space. That's a beautiful destination to seek. What have you learned over the last couple of decades about this work? You know, there's lots of people trying to do this. Institutions like schools and education systems are very robust, and you would often say a little bit calcified in terms of the mental models because of, you know, the system structures. What have you discovered? Like, where are the kind of flashes of hope?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing to acknowledge always is that this is really hard work, right? Because what we're talking about is human culture and human tradition, and we're talking about disrupting that. And it's going to be resistant to that disruption, and that's just part of human nature. You know, I'm an anthropologist by training and by background, and so for me, everything about this work is to recognize the human at the center, right? And that's the human as part of the collective. That's the human as the individual. That's the human as part of the family. That's the human as, you know, a part of a tribe, and so on.
Yes.
And for me, it's impossible to separate those elements out of understanding the nature of the work. And I always make sure that regardless of who I'm working with, who our partners are, what we're rolling up our sleeves to do, that we're collectively recognizing that the systems we're trying to change are change resistant by design. And if we don't understand that, it's going to be very, very difficult not to beat your head against a brick wall and bring back the equivalent of a bloody stump, right? Not to be particularly gruesome, but
so
seriously, right?
Yeah, that's such a good visual.
So, you know, in terms of what have I learned over time, it's first and foremost, you have to center yourself in that reality, and that then to stretch beyond that and say, look, we can approach this collective work in the same way we've always done this, or we can be brave and we can be bold and, you know, all those buzzwords that everybody loves to use. We can literally say, what would happen if? And if being the primary driver there, right? You know, let's go back to imagine anything is possible. Why not start there? Instead of making that your outcome, make that your beginning.
Oh, such good work. The purpose motive, you know, of, and I think for people listening to our conversation, you know, many of them are right at the front line of this, like they're at the interface between young people and the pedagogue, the educator, and they are that educator. And so I wonder about your reflections on, again, all the partnerships and stuff. And I know that your work is largely contextually based in the United States. So there are nuances internationally. But what I've learned from traveling around for all these years is young people are they have the same underlying principles. They want to be loved. They want to be seen. They want to be challenged. They want to be heard. They want to be socially connected. They want to have a say, be a co-producer of their work. So what would you say to somebody right now that's kind of in, like, you know, or do you have a story about how you've seen learning really linked to life in a powerful way while still operating within the constraints of a system? Because I think that's of course, that's the dissonance. And I'll just add one more thing. And at least I sometimes find myself in a quandary with my work, because my work really is about possibilities. It's around strategic futures and stepping into that space of potential and creativity, true creative potential, like your life force. What are we going to do? All we have is choice. All we have is time. We're not time poor.
Right.
It's all we have. It's just how we choose to, what we pay attention to. So then there's a dissonance that can be created, which is, well, I'm enlivened, but then I'm also contracted in this current situation. So I just wanted to add that just to see if you can, give us some strategies, give us some stories.
You know, I think that, when I think back to some of the most profound sort of moments or journeys that I have had the privilege, and it's truly a privilege, right, to be part of. Some of the underlying features of those profound journeys have been the fact that these young people have been able to identify the thing that matters to them the most. And then through their own agency or through the facilitated mentorship of really caring, meaningful adults, have been able to advocate for themselves within the system that those experiences and those things that they love should be allowed to count. And what do I mean by that, right? At the end of the day, no matter where we are in the world, and yes, we do a lot of work in the U.S., but we work lots of other places around the world as well. And it's the same, to your point. We see a lot of similarities. And what young people desperately need is the thing that I am doing or the experience that I'm having, that internship, that out-of-school experience, that sports team, right? All of these elements should count towards whatever the requirements are that I'm supposed to be meeting. Because the reality is, the likelihood I have found is that young person is going to learn as much, if not more, in that unstructured, unregulated time. Back to your time notion, right? And then they will within the confines of the traditional system, no matter what system they happen to be sitting in. So I would argue it's a great epic failure on the part of all of us who are supposed to be helping young people move through the world that says, no, that doesn't count. You need to go and sit in this seat and spend 50 minutes, or my favorite are 42 and a half minutes, whatever. What is that, right? So that I can give you credit for whatever. And none of that makes sense. And it's not linking learning to life. And the fact that we're segmenting learning, like we're going to ring a bell and you're going to go to math class, we're going to ring another bell and you're going to go to English or social studies or science or whatever, in whatever part of the world it happens to be. What is that?
They are trying. Yeah, that's right. I think those are attempts in some ways to create, the Committee of 10 in 1890, for example, that kind of said, we're going to do science, to year 10, then we're going to do biology and chemistry. Yeah. I mean, nowhere else in the world.
It's artificial.
It is
not
absolutely.
Real. There's nothing real
arbitrary.
About it.
No.
It is.
But it's so interesting. And I think often in my conversations with teachers, we also have an identity aspect to this change work, which is I actually am a drama, languages, PE teacher. So there's a lot of identity that I hold in that.
Oh,
if you're a STEM teacher or, an English, and then all of a sudden, as we see our role perhaps shift to being kind of more like guides, activators, facilitators, active facilitators of learning instead of just instructors, and I think that's the trend that we're seeing, especially with generative AI and tutors and all the rest of it. that's a big change journey for all of us to go on in terms of identity. Like, but actually, no, I love my subject area. So, yeah, what's a reflection you have on that, on the identity piece?
First, I would say, yay. Thank goodness you love something. I mean, I do a lot of work with educators who are looking to sort of figure out how to make this change. And one of the things that I do every single time is like, I don't care what your subject is. We're gonna spend some time together in this work, and it does not matter to me what it is. In fact, leave it outside the door. When you come in the room, all I want you to bring is you. I want to know, what do you love? What are your hobbies? What matters to you? I'm trying to get at your true, authentic self again. In the same way that as educators, we expect our students to show up and be their true, authentic selves and to bring their A game, right? Whatever that happens to mean to any individual. But why shouldn't the students expect the same from you, right? So if if you love, I'm just going to make something up here. If you love to knit, and that's what you do with all your spare time, awesome. Why wouldn't you bring that into the experience of learning with your students, right? And figure out a way to make that tangible. They want to know who you are. The students want to know who you are, not as their teacher, but as another human. And so I think that a lot of this is, and I talk about it as teacher passion. And actually, that's the title of my next book that's coming out hopefully in the spring. And I use this for a reason. It's because if you could show up with these pieces and parts, you can do some incredible things. And in this new book, I tell the story of 5 incredible, in this case, elementary educators who I've known for many years and been on a long journey with. And one of my favorites is a kindergarten teacher who, when we first started working with her in her school district in her state, it was a really big statewide initiative. And this change was going to be super, super difficult. And I will never, ever forget, lots of ideas were being batted around by the school, and it got really overwhelming really, really quickly for this educator. And she says to me, I don't know about any of that other stuff. I just love birds. And I'm like, you love birds? She's like, yes, I'm a master bird. I'm a global master birder. I'm like, well, that's incredible. There's nothing in kindergarten you can't teach through birds. So how about we give it a try? It was like 20 years ago or something. And oh my gosh, the things that this educator has been able to do with kids, and more importantly, the change she's been able to make inside her own community because she inspired these kids so much. And those are the pieces that's the authentic. And this gets back to your question around identity. I also think it's fascinating that you're asking about this because we've been engaged in a multi-year research study specifically around identity and identity formation in kids and how the levers, especially in STEM and STEM fields, for kids get turned on and off. Especially like for girls and math and things like that, because we really want to understand what these levers are and how a student actually establishes and confirms their identity for themselves. And can we design with those levers in mind? If they're turned off, can we turn them back on? Things like that. Really interesting.
So good. Lisa, this might be a bit of a simple question, but I'm really curious because clearly, like this connection between scientific research and real-world problem solving and transdisciplinary kind of learning spaces. Can you make the case for it? Because what I notice is why STEM came in some ways to try to connect different disciplines, but of course it's also in some time we had a moment in Australia, for example, where there was this coding piece. Everyone needs to become a software programmer.
Right, yeah.
Where it's like it's the skill of the future. And of course, some of us were saying, well, I'm not so sure about that. It's probably computational thinking that underpins it, and data science. But yeah, what do you think the current state of STEM is at this point? And why should it be a focus? Or what is it trying to achieve by bringing these 4 or more, because there's many kind of increased acronyms, and then eventually it becomes the whole learning process. You go, well, okay, well, it's now a focus, but not. So, yeah.
I collect those, by the way, the acronyms all over the world, because there are some crazy ones, right? But I think that's also indicative of the problem, right? To get to the heart of your question, right? So what is this thing? So in my mind, what this thing is or should be is it is a foundational approach. Back to your point, it's about how one thinks. It's about problem solving and reasoning skills. It's about that endless curiosity and asking questions. It's nothing more than a tool. It's like your computer. It's like AI. It's like any other sort of tool that we use. You know, STEM with multiple M's, add an H, right? Whatever we need it to be, right? All of them, right? Sequel was one of my favorites. So if we need quantum physics in there and someone was feeling left out. So at the end of the day, though, right, it's foundational, right? And so to get back to the question about, you know, the what or the why of pulling all these pieces together, the way I explained it is like this. If we believe that every child or learner that walks through your doors, wherever that happens to be, is capable of solving the world's greatest problems, right? Well, what a wonderful thing to think about anybody that comes in, right? Because that's not the case. We live this. We know that's not the case. That we don't collectively all believe that about every kid we're interacting with and teaching, which is a shame in and of itself. Yeah. But more importantly, if we believe that fundamentally, it means that we're going to approach that individual learner, recognizing that, you know, it is our duty to ensure that they can in fact do those things, right? So it's the skills development, it's the understanding of the social and political world, it's their understanding of the environment, and it's the weaving of these ideas all together so that our learners can draw on the things that they need in any moment to solve whatever it is that's before them. And in my mind, that's what STEM is supposed to be. It's that foundational piece that allows us to explore what we want to become.
Beautiful.
Making sure, I'm going to add to that, making sure that no opportunity is lost, because opportunity is a funny thing, right? It's not an opportunity if I can't actually give it a try.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where do we learn what we're capable of if there's no space to experiment into that place? Yeah.
You know, and I tell people all the time, you know, when they come to pass to the innovation lab, we built an education R&D prototyping facility. And in that, it's our place we play all day, right? This is where we build, design, test. It's an amazing environment that we've created. And I will tell people who come, and people visit from all over the world to come see what it looks like. Wow. And I tell them, look, you know, I will put the learners, the students in the space up against any R&D team in the world. Are they always going to have the answer? Are they going to have the right answer? Are they going to have the winning solution? Nope. But what I can tell you is they will approach it with a fearlessness that allows them to explore every possibility that they can come up with. And that's the win.
Oh, gosh, I love that. And at least just a question on in your view, how do you think learning happens?
It's an interesting question. How do I think learning happens? Well, the best I can do on that, I think, is really sort of tap into my own experience and my own understanding of the way that I learn. And so for me, learning happens when I'm allowed to not only ask the question, but spend time actually exploring the possible answers.
Yeah, it's such a great. I love that question, by the way, and it's a good one that I would ask. I would recommend any principal asks there when they're recruiting teachers, because what it reveals is the invisible pedagogical mindset. And Brookings Institution has done some good work on that. But I just think it's such a great thing. It's like, yeah, okay, because often it's invisible, and it's like we assume learning happens. And I think if we're in a transaction approach, I teach. Some people say, well, I teach you, and then you learn. It could be a more transactional approach. I suppose I create an experience in which learning happens. It's more social constructivist, right? It's really fascinating. What about the connection between content and dispositions? You know, like, what do kids need to know today, Annalies? Because this is such a gray area, you know, like, and for a long time we've had cognitive offloading tools. You know, the internet was like V1. Now we've got Gen AI, agentic AI, so V2. what do we need to know? And like, what's the dispositional skill? How do all those things play together in terms of the work that you've done?
That's also a really interesting question. And I get this one a lot, right? And I think that, I always start with this amazing conversation that I got to have with Sugata Mitra. I don't know,
great.
probably 7 years ago or something like that. And, we're having a conversation about the way folks learn. And I'll never forget, he pulls his phone right out of his pocket and he says, and I think he's done this numerous times, right? He says, why are we teaching everything that this knows? Instead, why aren't we teaching or helping folks understand how to evaluate what it knows, or more importantly, everything that it can't tell us? And I really love that approach because I think it gets at the heart of the question in the sense that, when we think about learning and we think about the process of learning and we think about the potential of learning, the reality is the stuff, the knowledge, right? The foundational pieces, they set a core for us, right? It's important that we understand them. But the reality is we don't need to know the same things today that we used to need to know because we have tools that fast track that. What we need to know now is how to evaluate the information that we have, how to act on it quickly, and to put it to work for us.
Yeah, I remember seeing a video from Sugata. He talks about the three things, the three things for the future that we needed. And the third thing, one was reading comprehension, because you have to be able to, those are kind of basic skills to
Those are the
access,
foundational pieces, right?
Foundational pieces. But then there's kind of the transformative skills. And he said that number three is like how to believe was the third one. I just always thought it's so interesting because that really is mental model work.
It is.
Why do I believe what I believe about this concept, this situation, this political leader, whatever the case is?
Whatever
right?
it happens to be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like to think critically and deeply. That to me is like the thing that all of our education systems need to orient towards. And the kind of the surface level of, okay, well, we do the knowing. Even with assessment today, Annalies, where, these tools can create essays and assessment artifacts so quickly. It's better than students can. But the only reason we had the assessment was to measure the learning process that was trying to test for something, which is like maybe critical thinking or constructing a coherent argument, for example. So it's just such an interesting thing. I think this moment with tech is forcing us. It's probably the biggest question is assessment, actually. It's like forcing us to reconsider, well, the proxy no longer is going to be as valuable to us because it's kind of hackable. So then how do we have to restructure the learning experience and how do we move towards an assessment model which is continuous, it's iterative, frankly, more aligned to real world practice anyway?
Exactly.
When did you last do a closed book exam?
Yeah, right?
Like probably post-grad, I don't know, maybe something.
Yeah. When was the last time I did a closed book exam? Oh my gosh. My doctoral exams, I guess, right? That process that we had to go through. Do I ever want to do that again? No, it's useless. It's an exercise in regurgitation. It's not useless. It didn't measure anything, really, right? So
do you think, Annalies, because I agree with you. I'm trying to disagree with you. But and some people would say, well, it is useful because what it does is it is a kind of ranking feature. And I'm very much more pro matching rather than ranking as a paradigm. I don't really believe in it anymore, right? But this whole idea is, well, actually it showed that you were someone capable because of your skills at that point in time of achieving the PhD or whatever it is. Do you know, when you think about the credentialing system now that's just so still governs, the GPAs and all the other things that you have in the US. We have a thing called the ATAR, which is the tertiary admissions rank that helps you get into university and really only, only 10 degrees that kind of, Like, what do you think we're going with the future of credentialing? Have you thought much about that?
My hope, yeah, we do. And we actually do a fair amount of work in this space. And for us, we're really thinking about the idea of stackable credentialing, right? And micro-credentialing as a mechanism to be able to add value to, and I'm going to be really specific about that. So add value to these micro experiences that collectively add up to the demonstration of I am capable of, right?
Nice.
But it's not just that it's about the testing of the credential, right? It's about the experience of working your way through the earning of the credential. And for us, that's the difference.
Do you have any examples to share?
Yeah. So, for example, we have students that are super, super interested in drones, right? So a lot of the work that we do is around tapping into students' natural interests and then sort of seeing what we can do with those things. So drones, kids love drones, right? They're super intriguing, right? And imagine all the things you can do with them, right? Everything from the mechanics to the flight, to the visuals, to the engineering, to the sensors, it's literally endless. Data acquisition, right? So many things you can do with it. So if you take all that potential possibility and you break it down into fine pieces or elements, the reality is I could micro-credential somebody in their experience with this, which is nothing more than a tool, right, in so many different ways. So on the high end, right, it could be in the U.S., we have students earn the FAA, which is administers all flight, manned and unmanned flight.
Oh, wow.
They sit for Part 107B of the flight exams. That's a federal exam.
Okay.
Every pilot must take certain levels, right? This is right smack dab in the middle. It's just shy of I'm a pilot flying a physical airplane. So it's all the way up to that, right? On that end. But on the smaller end, it could be there's the credentials around the particular sensor that the drone is carrying, right? So we're using drones in precision agriculture. We're using drones to evaluate energy systems and building envelopes. So it's that full range of things, right? To say we're going to grab all the pieces and parts and we're going to give each piece and part a value. We're not going to ask you to sit for a test for all of it. We're going to ask you to have an experience or to demonstrate how you're utilizing that. So the building envelope is a really great example, right? So we put sensors on these drones, and these drones used in construction or in evaluating energy systems fly the building, right? And they're just gathering all of this data, right? Around all of these windows are leaking terribly, or all this energy is being absorbed, or this energy is being lost, and so on and so forth, right? And so the evaluation is, what do we do with that data, and what are the recommended changes based on the data I have? That's a micro-credential.
Brilliant. I feel like some of these experiences are just so enlivening, like just even you're describing that. And you say to a young person, and I'll be extreme examples, but okay, team, today we're going to use a drone not even that. What interests you about drones?
Right.
And then you start from that starting place versus kind of a bit of a command and control piece, which is, okay, everyone sit down. This is what we're learning today. This is what success is. Okay, I'm going to teach you explicitly, and then you're going to do some practice.
Right.
Like they seem like radical different learning experiences.
Well, and I would say radically different teaching experiences too. And I think that goes back then to that sort of authentic self. As an educator, what are you doing here? Very few. We probably all talk to them, but there are relatively very few people that are like, well, because, I love rules. We didn't go into teaching for that.
Yeah.
We went into teaching because we generally probably love to learn ourselves, right? There's this thing, this passion, this intrigue in that space. And so I think that when we create that disconnect between the reason we got into this profession to begin with and the way we actually practice that profession is part of the problem that we're having. And it ends up translating into the experience of the students that we're there to serve.
Yeah, it's so true. I think to your piece on authenticity, if a teacher's not having a joyful experience, it's difficult to create one for the learners. as well.
100%.
And
100%.
I think sometimes we do like, we're a student-centered school, but and that's that you can understand why that's the case. But it's kind of, you need to be a human-centered school because you know, you need educators to feel enlivened, supported, yes, stretched, because it's the most difficult job I've ever done.
Yes.
You know, especially leading a school, probably, you know,
Yeah.
just incredibly incredible role. But yeah, like how do we care for ourselves and care for our teachers in this moment where, you know, we see not a lot of people, well, we have less people wanting to be teachers than we have across the Western world, and we have these teacher shortages.
It's so true. And it's almost at a crisis point. And in some places it is. I mean, I worked in a community who had been advertising for a science teacher for 12 years.
Oh my goodness.
There was not a single certified science teacher in the entire district. And it was a small rural district, so full transparency.
Sure. Yes.
But it didn't matter, right? And the kids in that community deserved a high quality science as part of their education.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I vividly remember the conversation of, look, you can advertise this position for the next 12 years. No one is coming here to teach science. And the reason is because science teachers are in high demand. No one wants to come here geographically. And other places are going to offer them so much more money than you can. So what if instead we rethink the way you deliver science in this community and make it such great science that your kids outperform all the other kids in science?
Wow.
But those are the realities of this profession. We are losing people, really great people, honestly, and we're losing them every single day, and we're not attracting new people, and we're not capturing people who are ending careers in other things for a variety of reasons. They're retiring, they're ready to make a shift, who would be incredible teachers. But we also, in lots of places, there's not an easy path to be allowed to teach.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I think if you're a teacher listening to this, thank you for what you do. Honestly, I mean, it's such a crucial role, and I certainly speak for myself, Annalies, and my colleagues. We just feel so lucky to be able to support teachers, just to kind of remember what we're doing this for. If we were to sit down and have a conversation in 10 years, Annalies, which perhaps we do, what do you hope we are talking about? What do you hope the future has become in 2035, especially for education?
Yeah. So for education, what I hope is that we stop having conversations about schools as this closed place of learning, and instead we talk about ecosystems or full communities of learning. And what I mean by that is, it is my hope, and I will fully acknowledge it might be incredibly naive, but I'm going to put it out there anyway because I know it's possible and I would love to see it happen. I would love schools, the roles of a school, if you will, right? That community to shift from being the place where all knowledge is like poured into a student, and instead to be the place that facilitates the learning that a student can have all over the community. So we stop just going to classes and we start helping learners find themselves in and everywhere, and that the role of school is to facilitate the experience of learning. So I want that for school. And for the rest of the world, you know, just like take a moment, breathe, look around.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for every human listening, take a moment, breathe.
Yeah, please do.
Slow down one's nervous system, activate some parasympathetic.
Yeah,
you know,
go outside.
Goodness. Yeah, have a sigh. Well, the physiological sigh.
Yeah,
it's just such a wonderful thing. Annalies, it's been wonderful to talk to you and learn more about your work and your vision and what you're doing. Thank you for what you do for young people. It's so clear that your passion, you found your place. You know, this is your thing to do. And from where we started, you know, with caring for your father and kind of, the human mind and, the fact that we have this arc of life and an arc of contribution. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we can have as many people as possible feeling like they are in their kind of ikigai, in that place where they feel enlivened and challenged, but doing the work that's theirs to do. What would you love to leave our community mulling over? What's a take-home message, perhaps, that you'd like to end with?
I would like everybody to do two things. So the first one is to say yes. And what I mean by that is we are bombarded all the time with these opportunities to do, try, think about, explore, you name it. And for whatever reason, we often have a tendency to pause and sort of hedge. Do I have time? Do I want to do, all these sorts of reasons why not? And we miss so much because we don't just start with yes, and then I'll figure it out, right? I'll figure out how to make time for it or whatever. And I just think for ourselves as individuals, we need to be open to all those possibilities, all those opportunities. And so that's one piece. And then the other piece that I would like to leave people with is think about what you have to offer somebody else. Not about what you need, but what you can give. Because there is somebody out there that desperately needs what you have to offer them. Try it.
Well, thank you for giving your expertise and your insights today, Annalies. It's been a delight to speak with you and learn more about the PAST Foundation and the Innovation Lab and the work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us on the Learning Future podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.